Breaking. Vladimir Putin just gave Keir Starmer 72 hours to respond, or face consequences that Downing Street is too afraid to even name publicly. This morning, Westminster woke up to chaos. An encrypted message from the Kremlin arrived at the Foreign Office just after dawn. Officials expected routine complaints, sanctions, espionage accusations, the usual diplomatic noise. What they got was something else entirely. According to multiple government sources, the message was direct, aggressive, and carried demands that left senior ministers visibly shaken. Within hours, emergency meetings were called across Whitehall. Intelligence chiefs were pulled from their morning briefings. Military commanders received urgent notifications, and Keir Starmer's government shifted into full crisis mode, the kind of response usually reserved for active threats on British soil. If this story matters to you, hit subscribe now, because this situation is developing by the hour, and you'll want to see what comes next. Here's what we can confirm so far. The Kremlin's message accused the United Kingdom of crossing a red line, allegedly participating in covert operations that Russia claims threatened its national security and regional stability. Moscow demanded an immediate response, and according to leaked intelligence briefings that surfaced later in the day, that demand came with a specific timeline. Now Downing Street has refused to confirm the exact contents of the communication. The phrase national security reasons has been repeated so many times today that it's starting to sound less like a justification and more like a shield. But the government's silence is telling its own story. Because when ministers dodge direct questions, when the Foreign Office refuses to comment on basic details, when every official answer sounds rehearsed and careful, people notice. And people are asking the obvious question, what exactly is Britain hiding from its own citizens? The lack of transparency has only fueled speculation. Social media is flooded with theories. News channels are running constant coverage. And with every passing hour that Downing Street stays quiet, public frustration grows louder. Inside the House of Commons, the tension boiled over within minutes of the session starting. Starmer stood at the dispatch box, his voice controlled but noticeably tight. He insisted Britain had acted entirely within international law. He praised the work of UK intelligence services. He promised strength, resolve, and unwavering commitment to national security. But MPs weren't satisfied, not even close. Conservative backbenchers demanded full and immediate disclosure. They accused the Prime Minister of hiding behind vague assurances while the country faced a genuine threat. Reform UK went further, claiming the government had provoked a nuclear power without any coherent strategy or exit plan. Even Labour loyalists, usually reliable defenders of the front bench, looked uncomfortable. They shifted in their seats, exchanged glances, and waited for answers that never came. The chamber became a pressure cooker. Accusations flew across the aisle. Shouts echoed off the ancient walls. Points of order were raised and ignored. And through all the noise, one question kept cutting through everything else. What is in that message that the government refuses to show us? Starmer offered no new information. He repeated his earlier statements almost word for word. And when the session ended, MPs left the chamber more frustrated than when they entered. This is where the story takes a much darker turn. Multiple sources, speaking anonymously because they weren't authorised to discuss classified briefings, claim that Putin's warning contained a second section. A section that Downing Street has kept completely hidden from the public and even from most members of Parliament. According to those sources, Russia's demand wasn't just about UK intelligence activity or diplomatic complaints. It was far more specific and far more dangerous. Moscow allegedly wants Britain to withdraw active support from a key Eastern European ally, a move that would fracture Western unity, weaken NATO's Eastern defence posture, and send a clear signal to every nation in the region that British commitments can be broken under pressure. If this is true, it puts Starmer in an impossible position with no clean exit. Agree to the demand, and Britain looks weak on the world stage. Allies lose faith in London's reliability. Decades of strategic partnerships and mutual defence commitments begin to crumble overnight. Every nation watching would learn that threatening the UK produces results. Refuse, and Britain faces direct confrontation with a nuclear-armed state that has repeatedly shown it follows through on threats. A state currently engaged in the largest European land war since 1945. A state that has already demonstrated willingness to absorb massive costs to achieve its objectives. There is no good option here, only choices between bad and worse. And everyone inside Westminster understands exactly how narrow the path forward has become. Outside Parliament, the British public made their voices heard. Protesters filled Westminster Bridge within hours of the first news reports. The crowd was mixed. Some waved Union Jacks and chanted for strength against foreign pressure, demanding that Britain never bow to threats from any nation. Others carried signs demanding transparency, accusing the government of hiding the truth from the very people who elected them to serve. The mood was electric, tense, and deeply unpredictable. Police lines held firm as crowds pressed closer to the barriers. Helicopters circled overhead, their rotors cutting through the noise below. News cameras captured every confrontation, every chant, every moment of friction between protesters and security. This wasn't political theatre or staged outrage. This was a country grappling with genuine uncertainty, and a public that refuses to be kept in the dark, while their government makes decisions that could affect every person in the nation. By evening, similar gatherings had formed in Manchester, Birmingham, and Edinburgh. The crisis was no longer confined to Westminster, it had spread across the country. Then came something few people expected. Buckingham Palace, typically silent on political matters, careful to remain above the daily noise of government, released a rare public statement, short, pointed, impossible to ignore. His Majesty remains fully informed and deeply concerned about the evolving situation. Constitutional experts immediately noted the significance of those words. The monarch stepping into the shadow of a geopolitical crisis, even in purely symbolic terms, signals that the stakes have risen beyond ordinary politics. It suggests that the situation has reached a level where the head of state feels compelled to acknowledge it publicly. Royal watchers reported that senior palace aides were seen moving urgently through corridors throughout the afternoon. The king was receiving regular briefings, and while no further statements were issued, the message was clear. The Crown is watching, and the Crown expects this crisis to be handled with the seriousness it demands. This is no longer just a government problem. This is a national one, and the weight of that distinction hung over Westminster like a storm cloud. Across the Atlantic, the White House moved with surprising speed. A formal statement backing Britain was issued within hours of the news breaking, condemning what American officials called aggressive and destabilizing rhetoric from Moscow. The statement praised UK leadership and reaffirmed the unshakable bond between the two nations. But even this show of support raised new questions. Why did Washington respond before Downing Street had finished crafting its own public messaging? What level of coordination happened behind closed doors before either government spoke publicly? And perhaps most importantly, what does the United States know about this situation that the British public hasn't been told? Sources in Washington suggested that American intelligence agencies had been tracking the development of this crisis for days before the message was delivered. If true, it means the UK government had advance warning and still appeared unprepared for the public fallout. The speed and forcefulness of America's involvement suggests this crisis extends far beyond British borders. Whatever Putin's message contained, it clearly alarmed more than one Western capital. The most striking moment of the entire day came from an unexpected source. A senior UK military commander, speaking off the record to a group of defence journalists, offered a blunt and alarming assessment of the situation. "This is not rhetorical," he said. "This is strategic positioning. The United Kingdom must respond decisively and clearly, or we risk being seen as vulnerable, not just by Russia, but by every adversary watching how we handle this moment." That comment spread across news channels within minutes, and it fundamentally changed the nature of the public conversation. Because when military leaders start issuing warnings, even anonymously, even carefully, it means the threat has moved beyond diplomatic games and political posturing. It means that professionals who assess danger for a living, who spend their careers preparing for worst-case scenarios, believe this situation is serious enough to speak publicly. The Ministry of Defence declined to comment on the remarks, but the damage, or perhaps the warning, was already delivered. Late tonight, after most evening broadcasts had ended, a new and alarming detail emerged. A journalist with connections inside the Foreign Office claimed to have seen the final line of Putin's warning, a sentence suggesting that Russia expects Britain to deliver a formal response within 72 hours. Not a suggestion, not a request, an expectation with implied consequences. Downing Street has neither confirmed nor denied the existence of this deadline. The Foreign Office declined all questions on the matter. Every minister who appeared on late-night news programmes repeated the same careful, rehearsed, lawyered answers. But if the deadline is real, the clock started ticking the moment that message arrived. And no one, not the government, not the opposition, not the intelligence community, seems willing to publicly state what happens when that clock reaches zero. As most of London slept, the crisis continued to deepen. Sources inside Whitehall confirmed that security services quietly elevated the national threat level just after midnight. No public announcement was made. No alerts were sent to citizens, but those with security clearance felt the shift immediately. Phone lines across government departments buzzed with encrypted calls. Military readiness protocols were activated at bases across the country. Senior officials who had gone home were called back to their posts. The machinery of national defence began moving, quietly, carefully, but unmistakably. Inside Downing Street, lights burned well past 2 a.m. Starmer met continuously with his closest advisers, reportedly wrestling with the most consequential decision of his political career. What tone to take with the public, what to reveal, what to hold back, how to project strength without provoking escalation. One advisor, speaking afterward, admitted the weight of the moment. Every word matters now. The wrong sentence could tilt everything. So here's where Britain finds itself this morning. A foreign power has issued a direct and aggressive warning to Parliament. The government is refusing to disclose the full contents. Leaked intelligence suggests demands that could fracture Western alliances built over generations. A deadline may be approaching with unknown consequences, and the British public is being asked to trust leaders who won't explain what's actually happening. This is not normal diplomacy. This is not routine international posturing. This is a test of leadership, of transparency, of national resolve, and of whether Britain can hold its nerve when pressure comes from every direction at once. The question now isn't what Putin said in that message. It's what Keir Starmer will do about it. Will he stand firm and accept the risk of escalation? Will he seek negotiation and accept being called weak? Or will he continue hiding behind national security while millions of citizens demand to know what their government is doing in their name? We don't have those answers yet, but we'll be covering every single development as this story unfolds. If you want to stay on top of this crisis, make sure you're subscribed and notifications are turned on. We're tracking this situation around the clock. Drop your thoughts in the comments. What do you think Britain should do? Stand firm or seek dialogue. And if you know someone who needs to understand what's really happening right now, share this video with them. This story is far from over. The next 72 hours could change everything.